Like, it's just anxiety. It's in your head. You're fine. What do you want us to do? Give you an anxiety pill? When I'm pregnant, I can't raise a baby like this. I can't even take care of myself. Like, it got to the point where I was like not brushing my teeth because I just felt so sick.
My name is Michael Rubino. I'm on a personal mission to make sure you don't get sick inside your own home.
I knew there was something wrong. I'm just so relieved there's something that you can do about it.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Never Been Sicker. Today's special guest is Kate. ThatCrunchyMomKate, actually. Kate, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to get to ask you some really cool questions like, what does crunchy mean? And, what does that lifestyle mean? And what are we going to take away from that?
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to be on the podcast. Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to just kind of dive in, tell you a little bit about me, how I got started, and all the fun things, including what crunchy means.
Good. Yeah, so let's start off. What does crunchy mean? And for anybody that doesn't know what crunchy means, like me, what does it mean? And I have a feeling maybe I might be crunchy too. Who knows?
Yeah. I think there's differing levels to the crunchy. To me, crunchy means someone who's more natural minded, someone who kind of goes against the grain, puts in more research than just doing, hey, we've always been taught this, let's just follow it. Someone that's crunchy is kind of more open-minded, is wanting to better their health, better their family's health, doesn't really care about being like the quote unquote oddball out or the weirdo. I really take pride in like, I don't care if I do things differently than other people. I don't care if I stick out in my beliefs. I, to my core, just really care about having a healthy family, raising a healthy child, and keeping myself healthy as well.
I freaking love that, by the way. So you know what? I'm going to say that I'm crunchy too, for sure.
Perfect.
It's interesting. I'm definitely a data-driven guy, but I would say that my whole career literally was born out of me just asking questions like, why are we doing things a certain way? And why are people getting sick in their own homes? And all these amazing questions that I feel like still aren't fully answered, but it's by asking these questions do we get the answers we need. And so, unfortunately, I think a lot of us get into this systemic situation where we're just waiting for the government to tell us what to do, waiting for these government regulations to give us, to conduct research and give us information. And, look, it took 20 years to ban a food coloring, right, that we knew caused cancer. And so these are some of the things that, sometimes when you wait too long and you don't become crunchy on your own, we get into this situation, right? So thank you for that. I understand that you have had some chronic illness and have dealt with some health issues. Can you share a little bit about your story and kind of what led you on this path to becoming that crunchy mom, Kate?
Yeah, for sure. So I was always just your average normal person. I went to college and played softball in college. I was athletic. I was quote unquote healthy, in shape. I became pregnant my senior year of college with my son, and that is when I fell chronically sick. I had crazy symptoms. I felt out of my body, would look at my hands and I would feel like they weren't my hands. I had extreme anxiety, racing thoughts constantly, felt like such a low mood, which I guess you could if I went to the doctor, they probably would have been like, yeah, you have depression. And these are just these symptoms that I hadn't felt before, to this extent. I had shortness of breath. I felt like I couldn't catch my breath. I was chronically fatigued all the time, brain fog that was insane. I felt like I was going insane. And I would go to the doctors and they would run tests. They would do blood tests. They would, do urine tests. And they'd be like, you're fine. It's just anxiety. It's in your head. You're fine. What do you want us to do? Give you an anxiety pill? And so I was like, oh my gosh, when I'm pregnant, I can't raise a baby like this. I can't even take care of myself. It got to the point where I was not brushing my teeth because I just felt so sick. So I was like, how am I supposed to get out of bed and take care of a baby? I just felt so hopeless. And then my son was born, still felt like crap, still didn't really know anything. But I started to have kind of inklings. I remember going to my OB and being like, all right, I'm pregnant. What prenatal do I take? And she was like, they're all the same. So just go to Walgreens. And I was thinking there's like levels to things. Like there's got to be a better choice option than just like what I can get at Walgreens. Just same with like food products, right? There's like
Right.
you can buy a bag of Doritos, or you can buy a bag of Siete chips, or you can buy a bag of Masa chips, right? There's like different levels, terrible, better, best. And obviously I didn't know that at the time, but it's just like that was when I started questioning, like there's got to be a better choice. And then when I was pregnant, like the medical system kept failing me, right? Like I would go in, they'd be like, you didn't gain any weight. Your son's not measuring correctly. We need to do an ultrasound. Something has to be wrong. And then they'd come back and be like, oh, everything's fine. And then I'd go in the next time and they'd be like, we can't find a heartbeat. Like they'd panic me. And then they'd find it and they'd be like, oh, everything's fine. And one of the times I went, they're like, your son it was for his, one of the ultrasounds. And they were like, oh, your son has a tumor on his brain. And I'm like, what? And they're like, we have to send you to the University of Iowa, which is like the biggest hospital in my state. So, I'm panicking, right? Like I'm already feeling like crap. And now my kid is also has things wrong with him. So went there and they're like, no, that was literally a speck of dust on their scanner. So like just all these things kept happening and I kept feeling like I don't trust anyone at this point. Like you guys don't even know what you're doing. So I ended up switching to a completely different hospital to give birth. And like when I gave birth, I had to advocate for myself. The doctor was like, I said I wanted to go all natural. So I didn't want any medication. And the doctor was like, well, I've never done a natural birth for someone. So like, I don't know how long this is going to take. And I just remember thinking, this is the biggest hospital in the state of Iowa. And you have never seen someone give natural birth. Like, how do I know more than you know? And I know nothing. So I just remember feeling so defeated. Like I couldn't trust anyone anymore. And then my son at his 2-month shots, he went for shots for the first time. And I remember just thinking like, I don't feel good about this. I don't want to do this, but I didn't really like, who am I to know more than a doctor, right? Like everyone does them. I didn't know anyone who didn't do them. So I got them for him and it felt so yucky. And then at his 4-month shots, he ended up having brain swelling. And it was at that point where I was like, holy crap, I have to take our health into our own hands or like something bad is going to happen to both of us. So from then on out, I just kind of started doing my own research. I didn't really know that many people who were quote unquote crunchy, but like I had kind of confided in some people that I did like know were kind of borderline crunchy. And it kind of just opened up this entire world of like, yeah, there's a whole group of people who go against the grain and actually listen to their gut feelings. And yeah, that's kind of how I became the crunchy mom. I found a naturopath. They realized I had severe mold poisoning. One of my tests, like let's say there's like a minimum number of mold you have in your body. There's a maximum. I was over the maximum. Yes, I was just, my body was just full of mold, which explained so many of my symptoms. I had thyroid issues. I had just had so much going on that no Western doctor really found, obviously, because they said I was like in perfect health. So anyway, yeah, I became a quote unquote crunchy mom. I turned into the weird girl. I used to be like the girl who would go out and, drink in college, didn't care what I was putting into my body. Like wasn't thinking about, my food choices, although like I thought I was eating healthy. So yeah, I started my Instagram page in March of 2023. And I think like 6 months later, I had like over 100. I've had almost like 200,000 followers. It just like blew up and turned into this huge thing that I wasn't expecting. I was just like the young mom who had chronic illness. And then just something about me is like, I don't really care what anyone thinks of me. So like, I'll just speak my mind. So I just started this Instagram page and started speaking my mind, speaking of corruptions, talking about my mold illness, and just blew up into like, it's my full-time job now. I quit my corporate job in January of 2024. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I escaped corporate world. It feels good. And yeah, it just kind of took off from there. And I've really just like been able to turn my pain into a purpose. And I think the story I want to get out to people is like, there are answers you can get. You are not stuck feeling that way for the rest of your life. And like, if you think you've tried everything, I promise you haven't. There's so many other things that you can be looking into to better your health, even if, your primary doctor isn't giving you the answers you want.
I love all of that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I know obviously what you've gone through obviously wasn't easy. And turning that pain into passion, I think is such a valuable experience. That
Mhm.
people are going through this type of pain all the time. They're going to their doctors. They're being gaslit by their doctors. They're being told they're crazy. Here's some anxiety medication. Here's some depression medication. And, it's this vicious cycle. And so it was really cool that you kind of, you were pregnant at the time, and maybe that was a saving grace, right? Because you were like, I can't go on this medication, right? I'm
Mhm.
pregnant, but think about all the people that do go on that medication, right? And they're not getting to the root cause of what their problems are. And so that's it's great to be able to hear like success stories like yours, because I think a lot of people that are listening, they're struggling, they're dealing with these chronic issues, and when you're not well, you can it's kind of hard to discover what's on the other side of that tunnel or
Mhm.
even envision it, right? And so I think you're a perfect example of here's what's on the other side of that tunnel, that light at the end of the tunnel. This is what's possible. So thank you for for just organically kind of you know creating this lifestyle, and for sharing your journey with other people. Obviously people are relating to it quite a bit if you've got that many followers, and you're helping people. So talk about some of the stuff you've learned on this journey. So first off, you had um, a lot of mold off the charts in your
Yeah.
body. How did you deal with that? Did you get out of the moldy environment and start working with a doctor? I mean, there are so many doctors out there. There's so much misinformation out there, so much gaslighting. How does somebody navigate that part of it?
Yeah, so we lived in a extremely old apartment when I got pregnant. My son's dad and I did, and we lived on the bottom floor in the basement. So what happens in basements usually they always flood. So and there had been plenty of times it had flooded while we lived there. So now like that I'm out of it, I'm like I can't even imagine how much mold was in that place. So we moved out of that when my son turned 1, and at that point I didn't know of like mold illness. And then we moved into a different house, and I that's when I had found my holistic practitioner, and she ran some mold tests on me. That's when I realized I had extreme mold. Um, and that's when she was like able to help me detox and do all the things. I started to feel so much better, regulated my nervous system, which I think was a huge part of my mold healing journey as well. And then we had bought a house in, I think, 2022. So I'm scarred from mold at this point, right? Like I've
Yeah.
learned about mold. I'm now like the full blown crunchy mom. I understand mold. We bought a house in 2022. We had the inspector come. I wasn't like super well versed in what to look for, but I
Right.
knew of mold, and I knew to look for like water stains and, like simpler things like that. Anyway, we bought this house. Inspector said it was good. The day 2 days after we closed, I brought our painter over to tell her like, hey, I want this room painted, this. We were in the master bathroom, and like I got like a glimpse, like at the corner of my eye, I saw a little paint chip, peeled it back, entire bathroom covered in black mold. And I'm
Wow.
like, no, this is my worst nightmare, right? Mold's not easy to fix. Like remediating is not a cheap project. And I remember telling my son's dad, like, we have to move. Like, we just bought this house. We just paid so much money to get all new flooring, all new carpet, but I can't live here. Like, I can't do this again. I will die if I do this again. And but we had already. So then we filed the mold. Like, we had someone come out and look at it, and they were like, even if you're going to move, you have to fix it legally to move because you know of the mold, which makes sense. And I wouldn't want someone else to move into the mold and, have the same problems. But so we got it remediated. But as they were remediating it, I was like going on along the journey of learning what it truly means to fix mold and what kind of like a Band-Aid effect was. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is probably in 99% of the houses where I live, like
Yeah.
where I'm from, and people aren't fixing this mold right. Like nobody's taking the right precautions. I remember like these people were still wearing their work boots, like walking through my house. I'm like, I can't even imagine how much mold spores you're tracking in from the last place you were in. And, they weren't like secluding the areas at all. And I just remember thinking like, so many companies have the same thing in common, and it's not their fault, but it's nobody's taught anything properly. It's just everything's a Band-Aid. Everything is whatever is a simple fix. And I remember like friends and just like peers and family were like, are you serious? Like, you're seriously going to sell that house? Like, that's a very nice house that you guys just bought. You spent so much money remodeling it and you're going to sell it. And I'm like, what my health is priceless. I can't afford to go through this again. Like, you guys didn't live through it. You don't know. So it's kind of hard sometimes to listen to like people you love be critical towards you. But it's kind of like how I am with a mom. Like, most people don't know what they don't know. So I don't blame them for kind of like thinking I'm overreacting. But yeah, we sold that house and we had to get it fixed. So it was up to like the legal standard or whatever. And ended up learning there was a leak coming from a pipe in the wall. Nobody would have ever noticed if I wouldn't have said something. But then we learned it was also in the basement, and it's just the whole house was filled with black mold. And
Wow.
nobody cared to investigate that. So yeah, we had to fix that. We moved out, and then I am currently building my own home, and I have hired a holistic contractor, a third party. And she is essentially walking me and my builder and my designer step by step of exactly what I need to do to build this home to ensure that there is no mold. There's not going to be leaks. There's no moldy lumber. We're not using, we're taking all the precautions. And it's been such a game changer for me to have the peace of mind, because I was like, I'm telling you guys right now, if I find mold in my house, that's it. I'm moving. Like, I can't go through it again. So it's been nice to have a change of pace and feel confident in what I'm doing. But now that I know what I know, I can't imagine ever just buying a home again. I'm scarred.
I mean, literally the house that is sitting in right now, I gutted the entire thing, remediated the entire thing, top to bottom, rebuilt it from scratch. It's basically a brand new home.
Exactly.
I was building a brand new home, and then that had mold. And so that was a disaster. And so, fortunately the builder that I hired was supposed to take certain precautions, didn't take those precautions, shocker. Right. And so,
right.
It's one of those things. It's really, really tricky, but this is actually like how my entire career started. 2012, Hurricane Sandy hits the Northeast. I'm going into homes and I'm starting to see people sick in their homes. And I'm noticing, this is because that industry of mold remediation, not all of them, but 95% of them, they're really just insurance contractors, right? And so
exactly.
they're trying to address things from a visual perspective, right? Well, visual only goes so far because we're actually dealing with microbiology and construction kind of mixed together. And so unless you have really, an understanding of microbiology and an understanding of construction, how to put the two together, you get these haphazard processes that just don't work, especially from a health perspective. It might look like it's gone, visually, mm-hmm. right? But from a health perspective, it's not. And as a matter of fact, I remember literally walking into people's homes, you would see no signs of water damage because everything was freshly painted. It was perfect. Like, you had no idea. But then you'd notice maybe some weird smells here or there, which maybe you've picked up on because it's like when you're sensitive, you really know what you're smelling, right?
For sure.
And you maybe can see some subtle signs, but honestly, like only if you look with a magnifying glass, right? And so once I started pulling back some of these walls and seeing like carpets of black mold behind it, I was like, wow, we have a massive problem here. Like, mold could be hidden. You might not know about it. It could be seriously creating such harm for people living inside, breathing this toxic air. And people have no idea, right? Because when you go to your doctor, I'm sure this happened to you before you found the doctor you found, right? And you're like, oh yeah, you even mentioned the word mold. They're like, mold?
Right.
Mold and health? What are you talking about? And it's like, despite all the medical journals and all the scientific information out there, it's just like not a known thing. And, we have like white coat syndrome here, especially in America, right? Where it's like, we're supposed to, doctors, we just have this view that like doctors are not human beings. They're doctors. Like, so they know everything about everything. And, we're all human beings. If my profession was a doctor, there'd probably be some stuff I would know specifically about the human body. And there'd probably be a lot of stuff I didn't know. Right. And that's why there's so many specialties of medicine. And there is an environmental medicine specialty, but yet people forget that. Or, a primary care physician, that typically just is checking your vitals and doing, kind of the basic routine checkups. They're not thinking about environmental medicine, are they? Right? No, that's why people get gaslit all the time. And so it's super interesting. How did your friends and family, how difficult was it for them to understand that, like, you're taking this serious? I mean, maybe sometimes people think that that's extreme, but I think what you did is not necessarily extreme. Like you're taking matters into your own hands. But I'm curious to see, like, did you have support, or did you have to spend some time explaining things to people?
I think my family and like close friends have come a long way in that, like, I'm sure, yeah, at first everyone was kind of like, okay, weirdo, like, why do you care about your health so much? But I think as like time and time went on, and they kept realizing, like, oh, she was right about this. Oh, she was right about that. Oh, maybe she actually knows what she's talking about. People are a lot more receptive to what I have to say. And your point of saying, like, everyone thinks if you're not a doctor, then you don't know anything. It's like so many people put their trust in doctors, but I guarantee everyone who's going to listen to this podcast episode has been gaslit by a doctor, or has proven their doctor wrong in some point. So it's like, we put these doctors on these pedestals, but it's like nobody knows everything. And just because a doctor is a doctor doesn't mean that they spent time researching mold, for example, or just any subject that maybe you're dealing with. Like, it doesn't mean that a doctor knows it all, right? How many times have you gone to the doctor and you ask them a question, they literally type it into their computer, looking it up themselves. Like, I think Western medicine has its absolute purpose, for sure. Like, if there was an emergency, I'm going to the ER. But I also think people need to realize you gotta, nobody's saving you but you. Nobody wants to save you as much as you want to save you. So you need to put your health kind of into your own hands, and really kind of step up and do advocating for yourself, not just waiting on someone to save you. Because your doctor's seeing how many patients a day, like, you're just a number to them. It doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And I don't want to sound like I'm so, like, I don't trust doctors at all. Like, my son broke his arm, I'm taking him to the ER. But as far as like my general health goes, yeah, I'm going to take that into my own hands, and I'm going to consult holistic practitioners. I also am in school to be a doctor in naturopathy, so I think I have some credibility behind me. But yeah, at first it was a hard pill for my family to swallow, that I was just going against the grain in absolutely every sense of the matter.
And look, I think that going against the grain, I think that's a powerful move. I mean, to be honest, like, you have to ask questions. I mean, if you don't like the response you're getting on the question that you're asking, right? I mean, something is off. And I think that's really important. There could be a million things wrong with your health, and a doctor can't possibly know millions of things. And they're not going to think of through millions of things and try to diagnose you in the matter of seconds. They're not a robot, right? And so,
yeah.
There's a lot of screening. There's a lot of assumptions that get made, and sometimes doctors make the wrong assumptions, as you put out there. And so, there are some amazing doctors out there. They've got really good programs that have great screening tools, that are using things in a unique fashion. Like you said, you found some, and you're studying yourself, but there's limitations, right? There's only so much that you can kind of focus on, or so much that you can do. So I think it's important for people to go against the grain just a little bit, and have good skepticism. I was on a podcast not too long ago, and the person was like coming at me with some skepticism about how much air quality really does impact the human health. And I'm like, listen, I appreciate your skepticism. You should be asking questions. You should be a skeptic. Now go and do the research.
Right.
Because if you're going to bring that skepticism, you also got to pair it with research. Go and do the research, so you can form an honest conclusion about what's going on here. Because the reality of it is, there's so much information out there, and you have to decipher fact from fiction to really come to a good conclusion about how do you become healthy? How do you stay healthy? And it's not easy, because you've got, a lot working against us. And I think that's part of the issue. Curious to see how you did your research, how you've kind of came to some of these conclusions that really helped you create lifestyle changes.
I think first step for everyone is you have to have an open mind. You have to be able to put your pride aside and just be open to new information, right? One of like the biggest examples for me was, and I don't know if you care if we talk about like vaccines, for example, but just, I remember like that never crossed my mind, right? Because we all do them. I got them as a kid. You know, it's always in movies. Like if you don't vaccinate, your kid will get sick, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, when my son had a vaccine injury, now I need to start doing the research, right? Like I need to, so for example, I went to the CDC site. I was looking at the inserts that literally list side effects. One of the side effects is brain swelling. So it's like there's so much info out there, but you have to be willing to essentially just not be lazy and just let others do the work for you, right? I think Americans especially have gotten into this habit of like, I don't want to do the research. I don't want to do the work. Someone else tell me what to do. And I think it's a fine line to just live your life on autopilot of this is what I was told, so I'm going to do it. Versus, you know, stepping out, being willing to have an open mind, to be the weirdo and do your own research and come to your own conclusions. I really like that there's so much info on social media, but my favorite people to follow are the people who then have, you know, sources I can look into, or they cite their facts. And not all pages are like that, but like some of my favorite Instagram pages that I learned from always had sources or had their facts checked in, you know, links in their bios. Like there's so much research out there, but a lot of it is just shadow banned or not readily available. And I think when you're wanting to take control of your health, and like someone like me, like I didn't have any other choice, right? It was literally do the research or I die, because I could not feel the way I was feeling anymore. So like I had to put my pride aside and I had to just like start doing my own research, even if I was a weirdo. So I feel like putting your pride aside is the number one thing you have to start with, and just having an open mind to learning new information. Not everybody knows everything. Not everything that you're taught in school is the correct and the only way to do things. I think, yeah, we as a society have just been so like on autopilot that we don't even think for ourselves anymore. Like even just going back to, you know, we're talking about buying homes and making sure there's no mold. Like we're on autopilot with buying homes. We go outside. Oh, we love the way the outside of the house looks. We love the wall color that they chose. We love the refrigerator that they have. Nobody's thinking like, let's open up the cabinets and see if there's any stains for leaks, or let's pull up that carpet and see if there's, you know, mold. Like nobody's thinking those things. So it does sound crazy to the average person because the average person is on autopilot.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think, you know, we need to get off autopilot and start asking questions and, you know, kind of start sticking up for ourselves and making good decisions off our own research, right? And I think that's really the key, you know, talking about vaccines, because obviously it's a timely topic. You know, we had RFK Jr. in the confirmation hearing just recently. And obviously, you know, he kind of originally came out pretty anti-vax. Recently seems like he's kind of becoming more balanced. You know, me personally, I'm neither anti-vax, pro-vax. What I want to say though is everything has a side effect, right? In medicine. Mm-hmm. I mean, look for an ad for anything. It's like, hey, I've got this pill. It'll help you with anxiety, right? So you won't be anxious anymore, but you may have suicidal thoughts.
Exactly.
Okay.
But then the person in the commercial is smiling, like as they're saying the side effects, so people aren't even listening to it.
And they say it really fast too, right? Yeah. And like in a different pitch, so you like, there's just no way you're paying attention.
Yeah,
like I've got this pill; it'll cure your headache, but honestly, it'll rip your stomach apart. And you're just like, you know, you're programmed to be like, right now, I'm concerned about the headache. I'm just going to hope that I don't get the side effects, right? And I think when you do research on vaccines, you know, there are side effects. It's, as you mentioned, brain swelling is one of them, right? And so different vaccines are going to have different side effects, right? And I think a lot of people don't do that research. So there's a risk with anything you do. Now you're going to have people say, is the risk is worth the reward, right? And that's going to be the entire argument of pro-vax, anti-vax is basically the risk is not worth the reward. And so I think those are two distinct viewpoints. Now the other viewpoint is from a pro-vax perspective is like, well, if everybody stops vaccinating, polio comes back. Okay. And so, you know, it's a really interesting and conflicted topic. I don't think that either side truthfully has enough data to be able to fully make an argument, you know, all like completely all the way. Here's what I believe. I believe that it's up to the family to do the research and make the decision. And we should not be kind of gaslighting each other. We should not be, trying to throw stones at each other if somebody makes a different decision than you make, right? And I think that's something that I would love for people to kind of build some camaraderie around. I mean, look, it's really tough, and I get it, but at the end of the day, my kids, for example, never got the COVID shot. Okay. My wife and I did. And then I had to, because I was traveling. I had no choice. I couldn't go places without it. Right. I didn't want to get it. I didn't think I needed to get it. And the reason why I didn't think I needed to get it is because I didn't think that I was at risk of getting serious effects from COVID. Right. But what's interesting about this is, like, my wife and I, we really sat down and were like, what? I don't think our kids need this. Mm-hmm. And like, they're getting this. Is the risk actually worth the reward? And we decided as a family, no, it was not, especially considering at the time, this was like untested, right? No, nobody really knows what's going on. We didn't really understand what the side effects were. This was kind of like, this was probably the craziest thing forced upon humanity at this time in 2020, right? Completely new technology, untested, forced on humanity. That's what it is. I'm going to call it what it is and call it how I see it, And so, were there people that disagreed with the decision my wife and I made? Absolutely. Right. I almost felt like uncomfortable talking about it, right? Because it got so politicized. But it's like, this is the type of thing that, I feel, and I don't know how you feel, that, this should be personal decisions that people make based upon the research that they do, based upon that research that they're making as a decision for them and their family. And I think, like, politicizing all this stuff, I think is bad. And I think creating division amongst each other, I think, is not the path forward either. And like, what about, loving and supporting one another, regardless of if we would agree with their decision or not?
For sure. And I think I don't remember a time, like, growing up, I don't remember a time where people openly talked about, one, vaccines, or two, their political affiliation. Like, I don't remember ever hearing my parents say if they're Republican or Democrat, or if they vaccinated us or not. And I think once 2020 happened, it was kind of like, if you vote for this person, you are shamed. If you do get this shot, you are shamed. Or if you don't get the shot, you are shamed. It kind of just became a thing where it became normalized to talk about so much, which can be good and bad. But I think a lot of people maybe felt pressure to be choosing one way or the other because of such strong opinions by their peers. And I think that's kind of just like snowballed into 2025 in really not being able to think for yourself, or, have your own choice and to go with it, instead of feeling like kind of guilty for what you're doing because of what other people are saying.
So that was pretty deep, and I'm sorry for that, but I think some of the exciting things that I wanted to ask you, talk about your new house journey here. I mean, you've already been through the ringer, right? Mm-hmm. And so, air quality is important. You're doing all the things. It sounds like you've brought an amazing team together. You're picking out probably different flooring products, different cabinetry. You're probably looking at low toxicity, low VOC, doing all the things right to really decrease the amount of particles that you're breathing in every time you breathe 20,000 times per day. Yeah. And so tell me what that process has been like so far. Tell me what you're most excited about, and any advice you have for other people that would love to do the same thing. How can they kind of get started on that?
Yeah. So I found an Instagram account called Holistic Homes with Christine, and she's based out of California, and I'm paying 100% for her services. So like, this isn't like a plug or anything, but I hired her because she goes step by step every single meeting that I have with my builders and my contractors. And she goes over like, okay, this is what we're doing for this. This is what we're doing for this. Like, for example, my insulation, I think most insulations has formaldehyde in it. Mm. And so like, we're going with a wool insulation, which I had never heard of. And my builders even hadn't heard of at first. Like, I think a lot of builders.
And it's antimicrobial, which is great.
Yes. Yeah. So like, I think a lot of, like, I have an amazing builder. He's the best in my town, but like, there's just still stuff he didn't even know was an option. So I have Christine like advocating for me, and then, signing documents like, hey, you have to sign off on this saying no moldy lumber will be used. If moldy lumber is brought into the house, it's their responsibility to take it out and redo it with lumber that's not moldy, and, constantly going over inspections. And if we are done using the lumber for the day, like it has to be wrapped up and put away so where it can't get rained on, just like so many little things. And then like the air quality, making our home like airtight, but also putting like purifiers in our HVAC, and just like so many small things that I would have never thought of, that my builder wouldn't have thought of, even though they're amazing. It's just like, more holistic steps that we're taking that I just feel so good about. Even just small things like my washer and dryer, like I'm doing a top loader instead of a front loader to avoid the mold, and putting moisture sensors under everything that has water. So like under my washer and dryer, under my kitchen sink, under my spare bedroom, bathroom, like everything will have the water detectors, so that if a leak does start to happen, like I'm notified instantly, tear up that floor if we need to, get to the source, dry it out. Like there's just so much preventative things we can do, but I think it's also very overwhelming for people. It is for me. If I didn't have Christine, this would be way over my head. This is too much for me to take in. So I'm really glad that I have her to be like step by step and make sure we have things in writing. Cause like you said, you were building a home, there was mold, couldn't do anything about it. Like that's what I'm trying to avoid is, hey, you got to sign off on this. Like you're responsible for this. And just really making sure that there's clear, open communication with me, my builder, and my third-party contractor, Christine, to make sure that we are building the most holistic home that we can. I know, like, for example, my builder, I had told him, like, I am very mold sensitive. This was before I hired Christine. And he was talking about the spray foam, like in the ceiling, as a better choice option. And then when I brought that to Christine, she's like, oh, no, we don't do that. Like, we're not doing that because that's like permanent. You can't get that out. Like, things can still go wrong.
Yeah.
So
if you have water behind it, like you're screwed, because basically it traps that water in. It's a nightmare, and it's still, the mold will still actually penetrate through and impact the environment. It's crazy.
exactly. Yeah. And luckily I have a builder who is so open-minded to like our suggestions, but I just remember that being one of his suggestions as like a better choice option. And then when I presented it to Christine, she's like, no, we don't do that. So it's cool to see, people like my builder, for example, have such an open mind for like what I'm really wanting. Cause he could easily be like, no, scram, like you're doing it our way or we're not doing it at all. So it's nice to see that he's open-minded in learning, and maybe he'll even take some of the stuff he learned from Christine and like implement it into the other homes he builds from here on out. But yeah, it's just cool to have the peace of mind that like, I'm building a healthy home to the best of my ability. Do I think it's going to be perfect? No, I'm sure, we'll have hiccups here and there, but to have peace of mind that like I'm informed going forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I mean, it's glad that you're able to find people, put together the right team, and make these decisions. And like talking about your contractor for a minute, it's not his fault. The spray foam industry, they basically like advertise this as like the best product. It's premium, it's an air barrier and a vapor barrier, and it's like really none of those things. But it's like everybody's misinformed on that, right? So it's really crazy unless you're, someone like Christine, someone like me who actually understands all this stuff, that's done the research, that's had to put this together, to take it apart and fix complex situations because of the, some of the pitfalls of everything. You just don't know any better. And so spray foam is probably one of the most widely used forms of insulation today. And I think it's going to be a big problem coming down in the future because of the potential to trap moisture and not be aware of it. I think is one of the biggest dangers of it, period. And I get the fact that it's got the best R value per density, but at the end of the day, the trade-offs for me are just not worth it. And I think making sure we have our modern home is pretty tight these days, as you probably are aware, right? And so we need strategies of just stopping to just try to create as energy efficiency of a home as possible, and start thinking about how can we create the most energy efficient home that also exchanges air so that people could breathe better. And like, it's all about how do you solve the right problem. And the problem that everyone's been trying to solve is energy loss since 1970s, and we had a global energy crisis. And look, I get it. Climate, the climate changing and everything else, we're trying our best. At the same time, if we're sacrificing people inside for the benefit of the climate, it's a pretty short-sighted view, right? We need a long-term solution that includes good for all. And I think, you're seeing some people like Christine who are trying to drive that point home and take things in the right direction. But this is what big industry does to us. It kind of puts us in a wrong place and takes us 10, 15 years to realize, that wasn't the best.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think that like going into this, Christine was kind of like, hey, the materials we're going to be using are going to be more expensive. So I think you need to get in your head like, hey, I'm going to sacrifice, doing this look for like my purposes of thinking it looks good compared to like, hey, I need to budget for putting in the extra installation or, putting in extra precautions for like the walls that have, pipes that could leak. Like we're putting extra precaution into those. And it's just kind of like, I've really had to learn over the years to prioritize like my health first, spending money on my health, and then, taking a step back for other things that I want. And I think that kind of goes for really everything in life now, as I like try to be the healthiest person I can be, is prioritizing, everyone says like, oh, healthy food is so expensive, but it's like, that's your lifeline, right? Like if you don't have your health, you have nothing. And it's not worth it. You can have all the money in the world, but if you're sick, you're going to want nothing more than your health. So it's really like a mind switch people need to have in, prioritizing. Maybe I do this extra layer of protection in my home to ensure, I'm doing everything I can to not have mold. And I'm willing to spend the extra money on it. I think a lot of people don't want to make that kind of mindset shift, or it's hard to do.
I can imagine that. And I want to prod you on that for a little bit, because I think the mindset shift is so important, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy when you're on a fixed income, right? It's easy. You already are spending all of your money to survive, right? Mm-hmm. So it's easy to be like, well, I can't, buy organic groceries because I'm not buying organic groceries now, right? And I can't afford the increase. But when you're not confronting all the things that you're spending money on that aren't benefiting your health, right? It's easy to make those claims, right? And so I think how did you overcome, kind of living off a set income and budgeting properly so you actually could overcome the cost difference, right? Like you had to have stopped doing something in order to start doing something, right? And so can you kind of guide us through that process for those listening? I feel like this might be very valuable.
Yeah. So when I had my son, I was making $7.25 an hour working part-time at the YMCA. Okay. I was dirt poor, right? Like I had no money, and my priority though was changed to our health. So like I stopped buying, a coffee out. I stopped buying new clothes. I think I literally went over 2 years without buying myself new clothes because I wanted to prioritize a healthy food. I stopped buying snacks completely. I bought meat, fruit, veggies. That's it. Nothing else. I was shopping at I still love Aldi, but like the grocery store Aldi, where things are a lot more I guess they are cheaper. Yeah. But it's just more affordable to buy things and, higher quality things. I could get the organic stuff at Aldi. And I know a lot of places have like Trader Joe's, like they have more affordable organic produce as well. But I think also just realizing like eating healthy doesn't have to be extreme. You don't have to be all or nothing, right? Like I didn't start buying grass-fed meat until like 2 years ago because that's when I could like really afford to do it. Before that, I was just buying like the conventional, ground beef, steaks, chicken, because I couldn't afford to buy the best of the best. And now I do buy the best of the best, but I still always prioritize like my healthy eating over, buying a new purse or something. That's just been ingrained in my mind. And I think I was at such a low point with my health that I was willing to do anything that honestly, the switch wasn't hard for me. Like, becoming my best self became my top priority because when you have your health, you have nothing. And I learned that firsthand. I was at rock bottom and I felt like I had absolutely nothing because I didn't have my health. And I remember thinking like, if I could just feel normal for one day, like I don't care about anything else. So yeah, my priorities really switched. And having, you know, a son and being on such a small income, like my first priority was also him. So like I switched over all of his diapers. I remember I had a baby shower, and, you know, people bought me like Huggies and Pampers and the brands that everyone uses. And I remember once I learned, you know, those have like formaldehyde or bleach in them. And I remember thinking like, I have to return those. So I would, you know, return the diapers in exchange for the better brands. And I would just budget to be like, you know, my son's diapers are one of my top priorities because he's wearing those 24 hours a day. So I really just learned to like put what I wanted aside to get what I needed, and just kind of like change my priorities to what is going to have the best outcomes for our health, not like what is going to, you know, going to get my nails done or something in the moment. Like that became like a no brainer to me, that I was done doing those things if I couldn't afford to get the healthy things first.
And look, you might make more than $7.25 an hour now, but I heard you say earlier, you're still prioritizing your health, right? You're making sacrifices maybe on the size of the house you're building so that you could have better quality products installed inside that. Or maybe there's some design elements that you wish you would have that just aren't going to fit in the budget because the budget's being eaten up by making sure this place is as healthy as possible. And so those are decisions that you could make. They're hard decisions, right? I don't want to sit here and say they're easy decisions, but they're the difficult decisions that you're deciding to make, and you're choosing, right? You're changing your behavior, and you're choosing to have a new lifestyle, one that supports your health. And I think that's really powerful. And so hopefully if you're listening to this right now, you're empowered by that, because I think it all has to start with you making the decision directly in your mind and then going and taking action around that, right? It's like making that a part of your life, that affirmation, you know? So thank you for that. Any other tips and tricks or anything else that would be remiss if we didn't cover here today?
No, I think just you gotta take your own health into your own hands, and even if other people think you are being over dramatic or crazy, but just taking your health into your own hands and really being empowered to make your own decisions.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. You know, thank you for all you do on social media and educating people on alternative ways to be healthy and stay healthy. And I love all your, I'm a huge Costco fan. So I love all your Costco videos that tell us what to buy, what not to buy, because, those are very helpful. And where can people find you if they haven't found you already?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok as ThatCrunchyMomKate. I have my own podcast we just started about a month ago. It's called Moms Unbothered. It's with one of my best friends who is also crunchy. We release episodes every Tuesday, so tune into that to hear more of just about me, about my interests, what we're into, the latest topics we're talking about. It's pretty it's a good way to connect with other like-minded people, or if you're looking to be more like-minded or open-minded, I should say.
Kate, thank you so much for being here again today. Really appreciate you, and we'll see you again here soon.
Sounds good. Bye, guys.